Hello, Scorpio. Today, I need you to slow down and listen, because what's happening isn't ordinary, and neither are you. The portal has already opened, and while most people are still scrolling, still searching for signs on the outside, your soul knows something is shifting on the inside. You've been walking through a long tunnel of silence, of unanswered prayers, and quiet endurance. In this moment, this back-to-back eclipse, an equinox isn't just a date on the calendar, it's a mirror, it's a test, and it's the reward you almost gave up on. The solar eclipse strips things bare. It pulls back the curtain on the illusions you've carried for far too long. The ones you wore like armor just to survive. You don't need that anymore. You're not in survival mode. You're being called into clarity now. And that's not always peaceful, because before you can enter the space of real peace, the kind that comes from truth, the eclipse demands that you stand still in the presence of your own shadow, not to be punished by it, but to finally understand it. This eclipse is not subtle. It doesn't knock on the door softly and wait for you to be ready. It enters. It moves through the room. It points to the thing you didn't want to look at, the feeling you avoided, the version of you that you kept dragging along even though it stopped fitting years ago. And for Scorpio, for someone like you who feels everything deeply but often keeps it hidden, this hits differently. You've spent lifetimes learning how to hold your power in silence, how to read between lines, how to sense what others deny. But this time, it's not about sensing others. It's about seeing yourself clearly, maybe for the first time in a long time. The equinox doesn't come to save you. It comes to measure what's left after the eclipse has done its work. This is not the kind of balance you fake for the world. Smiling when you're breaking, nodding when you're drowning. This is the kind of balance you earn after being undone and deciding to stand anyway. The equinox locks in whatever energy you choose now. If you're honest, if you let the eclipse clean out the noise and the pretending, the balance that follows will be real. But if you hold on to what's already slipping, if you try to keep the past breathing when it's already turned to ash, you'll feel stuck in a loop that no longer serves you. You don't need to fear the letting go. Scorpio, you've already survived worse. What's happening now is the quiet undoing of everything that held you back from your next evolution. And no, it doesn't feel dramatic. That's what makes it more powerful. You won't wake up to fireworks. You'll wake up feeling like something is missing. But that missing piece, that silence, that space is where your new life starts to breathe. It's not loss. It's preparation. It's the universe clearing the room for something more aligned to enter. But only if you stop filling the space with what no longer belongs. I know how tempting it is to hold on to what you know. Even pain can feel like home when you've carried it long enough. But this eclipse doesn't ask for your comfort. It asks for your decision. Not 10 dreams. Not vaga hopes. Just one clear choice about what you're ready to walk toward now. One truth you're ready to stop avoiding. And once you choose it, the equinox will take that signal and begin to stabilize it. To bring you evidence, to call in what matches that frequency. But if you stay undecided, if you keep orbiting the same indecision, the same back and forth, in the same wishful thinking without action, then what comes next will be blurred. Not because the universe is cruel, but because clarity is the only thing that moves energy now. Clarity is the only language the portal understands. Scorpio, this moment is rare. You won't see many like it. Eclipse first. Equinox right after. This is not normal. This is sacred design. The eclipse clears. The equinox calibrates. And you get to choose how you walk through it. Not with perfection, not with performance, but with honesty, with one true choice, with the kind of grounded knowing that doesn't need to explain itself to anyone anymore. You've already done the hard part. You stayed. You kept walking, even when the road disappeared beneath you. You kept believing, even when belief felt like madness. So now, as the sky goes dark and then finds its light again, let it be a reflection of what's happening in you. The shadows didn't win. They taught you. And now it's time to return to balance, not as someone broken, but as someone initiated. If today feels heavy, let it. If people fall away, let them. If something you once loved feels strangely hollow now, don't run from that feeling. That's the eclipse cutting ties to what you don't need anymore. You don't need to fix it. You don't need to force it. You just need to let it happen. Because what comes after this, what the equinox delivers, is clarity, is truth, is peace that doesn't shake when the winds return. So here's what I'll leave you with. Scorpio, you don't have to do this loudly. You don't have to post about it. You don't even have to tell anyone. Just decide. One thing, one truth. Name it. Claim it. Let everything else fall away. Because you are not being punished. You are being positioned, and this time, it's for something you don't have to chase. It's already coming. You didn't recognize it at first, the way things felt a little heavier. The way the air shifted without warning. How your thoughts became louder even in the quiet. But that's how it begins. Not with thunder, but with a nudge, a weightless pressure that grows until you can't ignore it anymore. You've already crossed the threshold. Scorpio. This isn't something you signed up for consciously. It's something your soul stepped into when the world around you wasn't looking. And now, you're standing inside the corridor of change. The first doorway was the eclipse, a silent event on the surface, but internally, it was a cosmic surgery, slicing through attachments, illusions, patterns you've long outgrown. And no, it didn't ask for your permission. That's what makes it sacred. The eclipse doesn't come to comfort. It comes to clean our use, to remove the residue of decisions you kept making out of fear, out of habit, out of the belief that maybe if you just held on long enough, something would change. But this time, holding on is the very thing that keeps you stuck. The eclipse is the cosmic reset, not a punishment, but a release, a whispered message from the universe saying, you don't need this anymore. And deep down, you already know it's true. The person you've been trying to be in order to be loved, accepted, or understood, that version has reached its expiration date. The eclipse peels that version off, gently for some, forcefully for others, but either way, what falls away now isn't stolen from you. It's returned to source because it no longer fits who you're becoming. And right after that, almost like a breath taken in after a long exhale, comes the equinox. The second door, not just a balancing point of night and day, but a moment where the universe asks you, now that you've been emptied, what are you willing to receive? That's why the order matters. You can't step into equilibrium with your hands full of what already failed you. You can't access peace if your internal world is still tangled in war. The eclipse clears. The equinox calibrates, and that sequence is everything. Scorpio. This isn't a phase that ends in a day. It's a portal, and portals don't just move you across space, they move you across versions of self. You're not just changing your surroundings, you're changing your spiritual frequency. And some of the things or people that used to make sense to you will start to fall away. Not with drama, but with detachment. That old craving to explain yourself, to convince someone why you're growing, it's dissolving too. Because the version of you that once needed validation no longer speaks for the you that's coming online now. This double portal works in layers. First, it silences the noise. Then, it brings the truth closer. But truth, for someone like you, can be a sharp thing. You've always seen what others miss, and that's both a blessing and a weight. But this portal doesn't burden you with more knowing. It simplifies. It strips away the extra, the overthinking, the chasing, the proving, the doubting, and in the space that remains, it offers you something that's been missing for years, the stillness that feels like home. You've done the shadow work, maybe not in rituals or journals, but in the long nights where you kept going anyway, in the quiet sacrifices no one saw, in the loyalty you gave even when it cost you peace. The eclipse sees that. It doesn't forget. And the equinox is not here to reward you with applause, it's here to offer you alignment, real, deep, internal balance that doesn't depend on whether or not someone stays, whether or not something works out. Because here's the truth, you've been inching toward balance is not found. It's chosen. And now that the eclipse has cleared the illusions, the equinox is asking you to choose. Choose who you are when no one is looking. Choose how you want to show up when it's not about proving, but about living. Choose what you're willing to stop carrying. Even if it once felt essential, choose what peace actually looks like for you, not what the world says it should be. And here's the thing about this moment, it's not asking you to move quickly, it's asking you to move honestly. You don't have to know exactly what comes next, but you do have to stop pretending that you don't already know what's done. Because clarity is what this portal responds to. And clarity doesn't mean knowing the future, it means being honest about the present. So if something feels like it no longer belongs, it doesn't. If someone's energy feels disconnected, it is. If a dream you once chased now feels hollow, it's because your soul has outgrown the fantasy. There's no shame in that. There's only space being made for the truth to take root. And maybe that truth feels uncomfortable right now. Maybe there's grief in the release. Maybe you're mourning a version of yourself you thought you had to be in order to be loved. That's okay. Let it ache. Let it sting. Let it pass. Because beyond that ache is something softer, something real. Something that feels like exhaling after years of holding your breath. That's what's waiting on the other side of this portal. Not perfection, not applause, but peace. Peace that doesn't disappear when people leave. Peace that doesn't require silence from your soul to survive in a loud world. This is the shift, Scorpio. Not a transformation of appearance, but a transformation of alignment. You are being moved not by force, but by frequency. And that's the kind of movement that lasts. Let the first door strip you down. Let the second door steady your feet. You've already entered. And now, you just have to walk through. So now that the doors have opened and you've already stepped through, the question becomes, what will you do with the silence? This portal does not respond to noise, not the digital noise of strangers performing joy online, not the conversations that leave you drained, not the overthinking loops that keep you tied to what's already falling apart. The eclipse doesn't care about how loud your life looks. It listens only to how quiet your spirit has become. Because it's in that quiet that something begins to rise, not from outside, but from the deep center of your own knowing. That's why this moment calls for solitude. Real solitude, not loneliness, not isolation, but the sacred kind, the kind where your body becomes a temple and your breath becomes a ritual, where the silence is not empty, but exact, because in the stillness, the veil thins. The things that used to hide from you clarity, certainty, inner truth, now start to speak. But they speak in a language you can't hear when you're too busy pretending everything is fine. This is why you're being asked to step back, not to disconnect from life, but to re-enter it differently, to observe without reacting, to feel without escaping, and to finally realize that some of the noise you thought you needed was never comforting you, it was just distracting you from the fact that you were already changing. You don't have to explain yourself anymore. That part of the path is over. This isn't the season to convince people why your energy has shifted. It's the season to let that shift speak for itself. And it will not through words, but through your alignment. People will notice. Some will drift. Some will cling. Some will misunderstand. That's not your burden to carry anymore. This silence is for you, not for them. Because in the quiet, Scorpio, something sacred is unfolding. The eclipse doesn't come to punish Li ATN 7 and water wanna tell our A's. It comes to repay, not with fireworks, not with a sudden rush of miracles, but with balance, quiet, honest, irreversible balance. Every shadow that moves across the sun during this eclipse is a reflection of every moment you endured in silence, every night you cried without witnesses, every time you kept showing up while your world was quietly falling apart. None of that was missed. The universe saw it all. And now, it's answering. Not with grand displays, but with inner confirmation. This is repayment in the form of clarity, in the form of weight finally lifting without a fight, in the form of craving things that actually nourish you instead of keep you addicted to proving yourself. You'll notice this shift not because everything looks different outside, but because what used to tempt you no longer pulls you. That relationship that felt magnetic starts to feel irrelevant. That old dream you clung to so tightly now feels like a chapter that ended pages ago. That version of you who begged for approval, she's quiet now. Not gone. Just watching, letting you take the lead from a different center. This is not punishment. This is promotion. But it's a promotion only those willing to surrender to the silence will recognize. Because silence doesn't give you answers the way noise does. It gives you space. Space to recognize what's actually been true all along. That your timing is not broken. That your desires were never too much. That your healing has been working, even when you couldn't see it. The eclipse repays by removing what no longer serves, even if, at first, it feels like loss. Even if the cords cut are ones you weren't ready to let go of. But trust this, what the eclipse removes. It removes because it was weighing down. The version of you, the equinox, is now trying to stabilize. That's why you feel the pull to be alone. That's why certain connections feel like sand slipping through your fingers. You're not losing, you're shedding. Let yourself grieve if you need to, but also let yourself breathe in the space that grief creates. Because this is where the reward begins to take form, not in replacements, but in restoration. In the parts of you that were always worthy, always enough. Now being recognized by the very universe that watched you build in the dark. You're not here to be distracted. You're here to be revealed. And revelation requires reverence. That's why silence matters. That's why stillness heals. Because when you stop moving, when you stop chasing, when you stop trying to fill every gap, that's when the messages finally land. Not because you worked harder, but because you finally stop fighting the part of you that already knows. And that part, the quiet, clear, unshakable part, has been waiting for this moment. Let the eclipse clean what needs to be cleared. Let the equinox restore what's ready to rise. Stay close to the silence. Turn off the noise. Not because the world is wrong, but because your world is resetting, and only those who pause will feel the shift as the gift it truly is. You're not falling behind. You're being cleared for arrival. Let it happen. Let it heal. Let it be quiet. The eclipse doesn't ask you to look up. It asks you to look in. It moves like a half-shut eye in the sky, not open enough to see everything, not closed enough to rest. Just watching. Just listening. Not with judgment, but with presence. It isn't here to shame you for where you've been. It's here to reflect exactly where you are, not where you claim to be, not where you're pretending to be, but where you truly are spiritually, emotionally, energetically. This is the cosmic checkpoint. And the eclipse, in its silence, becomes the mirror. When the sun disappears and the sky begins to shift, the question isn't what's going to happen, it's who are you becoming? Because Scorpio, you've outgrown the masks. You've outgrown the performance. And while others are busy posting about the spectacle, The real transformation is happening in people like you, the ones who feel the weight of a new chapter before it's even written. The ones who sense that the eclipse is not a pause in the sky, but a recalibration of the soul. You can't fake alignment during an eclipse. You either feel resonance or you feel resistance. And both are messengers. If you're feeling calm, clear. Grounded, that's your confirmation. If you're feeling agitated, unclear. Detached from yourself, that's your instruction. Don't push past it. Don't numb it. Let the feeling tell you what needs to be seen. Because here's the truth that most miss: the eclipse doesn't reveal the future. It reveals your relationship to it. If you're aligned, the future feels magnetic. If you're misaligned, it feels threatening. But the eclipse itself doesn't change what's coming. It changes your posture toward what's already on the way. And right now, the veil between thought and form is razor thin. What you think, what you say, what you desire is echoing louder than usual. Not because you're suddenly more powerful, but because the universe is listening with no filter. It's not checking for morality. It's not evaluating worthiness. It's amplifying vibration. Whatever you're radiating, it multiplies, not weeks from now. Now, this is what people don't understand about manifestation during eclipse portals. It's not about how hard you try. It's about how clear you are. Vague désir create vague results. Split intentions create tangled timelines. If you're holding 5 different versions of what you want and hoping the universe picks the best one, you're not manifesting, you're scattering. But one clean desire, one truth spoken with clarity and claimed with certainty will cut through this energy like lightning. That's what the eclipse honors. Not the loudest cry, not the biggest dream, the clearest signal. So take a breath and ask yourself, what's the one thing I'm ready to walk toward without apology? Not the thing that looks best on paper, not the thing that pleases everyone, the thing that feels like truth in your bones, even if you don't know how it's going to happen. That's the energy the eclipse accelerates. But here's the warning: if you refuse to choose, if you stay in indecision, in fear, in performance, the eclipse will not wait for you. It will still accelerate something. It will amplify whatever energy is dominant. If that energy is doubt, it will multiply it. If it's confusion, it will expand it. The portal doesn't discern what you meant. It mirrors what you're actually radiating. That's why this moment requires presence, precision, honesty. You can't half want something now. You can't whisper a wish and then bury it under layers of disbelief. The eclipse hears you, the real you, not the one you post, not the one you protect, the one that speaks only when you're quiet enough to listen. That's who's creating your next reality. And for Scorpio, this is especially powerful because you already carry intensity by nature. You don't speak often. But when you do, your words carry depth. That's why your desires once named have weight. That's why this eclipse isn't neutral for you. It's alive. It's pulling at your core. It's pressing into your ribs like a reminder you were born for moments like this. So use it. Not to manifest things you don't believe in, not to repeat old patterns with prettier names. Use it to clarify. Use it to cut away. Use it to say, finally, I'm done pretending I don't know what I want. Because once you say it once, you name that one true thing, the eclipse begins the work. The equinox that follows will hold it, will balance it, will anchor it, but only if the desire is clean. Only if you're willing to stand behind it without folding the moment things get uncomfortable. The eclipse doesn't ask for comfort. It asks for commitment, the kind that doesn't look impressive, but feels immovable. This is your moment. To get clear, to speak less and mean more, to name the thing and let the portal carry it forward. You don't have to control how it lands. You just have to choose what you're actually throwing into the wind. Because this window is short, and this mirror doesn't stay open forever. The half-shut eye of the cosmos is watching not to decide for you, but to reflect what you've already decided deep inside. And now, it waits. Balance, in the eyes of the universe, is not something given freely. It is something earned. And right now, Scorpio, you are in the middle of that sacred test. Without the eclipse, the equinox would simply be another calendar event, a moment of symmetry on paper, a temporary stillness that feels clean but holds no weight. It would be balance without depth, peace without process, a fragile stillness built on denial, and that's not what the universe wants for you. That's not what you came here to experience. That's why the eclipse had to come first, to pull the curtain back, to expose what's still lingering in the shadows, to strip away what balance cannot carry, because true balance only arrives when you've let go of what distorts the scale, and distortion doesn't always scream. It often whispers. It hides in the dreams you outgrew but keep chasing. It clings to the relationships you've already left emotionally but still entertain out of guilt. It sits quietly in your routines, your language, your self-talk, and during this portal, all of it is being weighed. You don't need to fix it all in a day, but you do need to face it. That's what the eclipse demands: honesty, brutal, clean, sacred honesty. And when you offer that, even in silence, even in the privacy of your own awareness, the equinox responds. It doesn't reward perfection. It rewards precision. It locks in what remains after the illusion falls. That's why things feel like they're disappearing right now. Not dramatically, not loudly, but suddenly, subtly, and without explanation. That friendship you used to lean on the energy is just gone. That goal you used to chase, it feels disconnected, like it belonged to someone you used to be. That place, that role, that dream, it doesn't light anything in you anymore. It just sits there, hollow, waiting for you to admit that you've changed. This isn't punishment. This is preparation. What's fading isn't being stolen, it's being removed because it can't walk with you through this gate. And the deeper you've gone on your path, the more precise the removals will be. The universe isn't taking random pieces from your life. It's clearing what no longer resonates with your frequency, and you'll feel it not as pain, but as a quiet space, a sense that something's missing, and you're not sure whether to grieve or breathe. So breathe, because this isn't loss. It's liberation. You've spent so much time trying to hold things together. This is the moment when you finally realize you don't have to. Some things are falling because they've reached their natural end. And for the first time, you're allowed to let them. You're allowed to say, I don't want this anymore, and mean it without shame. You're allowed to admit that what used to be enough no longer is, and you don't need a breakdown to justify the release. Quiet clarity is enough. This is how transformation actually happens, not with fireworks, but with stillness. Not with declarations, but with decisions. Not with noise, but with the calm certainty that you're done shrinking to fit things you've outgrown. And Scorpio, you've outgrown a lot. You've outgrown the role of emotional caretaker in one-sided connections. You've outgrown the self-sacrifice disguised as strength. You've outgrown the idea that your value is tied to how much you can endure. That's the old version. And this eclipse came to take her hand, thank her, and walk her gently to the exit. Now, the equinox is asking, who do you want to be without her? And the only way to answer that is to stop looking at what's fading as failure. It's not. It's evidence that your inner world is shifting faster than your outer world can keep up. And that's okay. The outer always catches up, but only after you've made the choice. So make the choice now, not to force anything back into place, but to let what's leaving go quietly. With respect, with closure, with the knowing that if it were still meant for you, it wouldn't be dissolving in your hands. You don't need to chase. You don't need to prove. You don't need to rush to fill the empty spaces with something new. You just need to stand still for a moment and let the stillness speak. Because what's coming next isn't built on effort. It's built on alignment, and alignment only comes after release. You don't enter balance as a tourist, wandering through for a moment of peace before returning to chaos. You enter as someone transformed not because you chase perfection, but because you stood still when it mattered, because you let the eclipse strip away the noise and let the silence rebuild your center. Balance isn't just about things looking equal on the outside. It's about your energy no longer fighting itself. It's about your soul no longer negotiating with what hurts. It's about coming home to a version of you that no longer needs permission to be whole. And yes, some goodbyes have no ceremony. Some people fade. Some roll dissolve. Some dreams quietly shut their doors behind you. But that's not loss. That's synchronization. That's the universe aligning your outer world with the clarity of your inner one. That's your frequency shifting, not to leave you empty, but to make space for what finally fits. So when you feel the separation, don't run. Don't mourn what was never meant to last. Understand that what's leaving now has already completed its purpose, and what remains or returns will do so because it truly belongs. Scorpio, you've crossed the threshold not just of a new season, but of a new self. And what comes next will not require force, only presence, because this time, balance is not a hope. It's your new home, and you're finally ready to live in it.